Are you ready to take control of your life and completely rebuild who you are? In this full audiobook, The Hidden Art of Reinventing Yourself, Rebuild, Redefine, and Rise Stronger, you'll learn how to stop letting old habits, doubts, and fears hold you back. We'll guide you step by step to discover your hidden potential, break old patterns, and make conscious choices that shape the life you really want. You'll see practical ways to turn setbacks into growth, rebuild confidence day by day, and release the limiting beliefs that keep you stuck. This audiobook is packed with clear, actionable advice you can apply immediately to start seeing real results in your mindset, habits, and daily actions. Stick around until the end, because every section builds on the last, giving you a complete roadmap to rising stronger than ever. Don't forget to subscribe to Audiobook every day so you never miss life-changing guidance. Number 1. Discover your untapped inner potential. There is a quiet place inside every person where possibility gathers like morning light on a table, soft, patient, waiting for a hand to move it. That space is not loud, not flashy, and it will not announce itself with fireworks. It reveals itself through a gentle accumulation of small choices, answering the smallest call to courage, keeping a promise when no one is watching, standing up straight when the world tilts. Discovering untapped inner potential begins with the simple act of paying attention to that quiet place and choosing to speak to it with discipline and honesty. Start by noticing what is already present. The body gives clues, breath that shortens when fear appears, shoulders that climb toward the ears at the thought of judgment, a steady core that keeps upright through long work. The mind leaves footprints, recurring ideas, persistent curiosities, patterns of thought that return like tides. The heart whispers with what brings warmth, a tune that stirs memory, a person who sparks care, a moment when time feels suspended. These signals are the raw material of potential. They are not always dramatic. More often they are subtle, a small satisfaction when solving a problem, an odd comfort in a task others avoid, an unusual patience when teaching someone else. Practice listening with more specificity than habit permits. Spend a day cataloging moments that felt genuine. Write them down with detail. The time of day, the physical sensations, the thought that followed. This inventory is the first map toward what could be built. Potential is not a distant mountain. It is a collection of small cliffs and ledges. Climb one today. The Stoic approach to inner discovery is to treat the self like a garden that requires tending. Remove the stones that choke growth and plant deliberately. Begin with a 3-step habit. Observe, try, refine. Observe for 1 week. Record patterns without judgment. Try an experiment for 2 weeks. Take a small action that aligns with a noticed pattern. Speak up in a meeting, practice a short craft. Wake 30 minutes earlier to write. Refine for 2 weeks more. Keep what produces growth, discard what wastes energy. This method converts vague desire into measurable practice. It transforms potential into capability by the steady application of effort. Action meets potential when clarity is present. Define a single narrow goal that feels like a true extension of self, not what looks impressive, but what feels inevitable when fully considered. Instead of aiming to be more creative, produce one short writing piece every 3 days, or complete a single painting study each week. Instead of get fit, choose walk briskly 30 minutes 5 days a week. The specificity carves a path through fog. It makes the mind competent rather than scattered. This is not a denial of ambition, it is a sharpening of purpose. Ambition without structure often dissipates into distraction. Structure channels latent power into repeated, sustainable motion. Practical tools bring the inner map into real terrain. Keep a daily log that records 3 things. One small victory, one failure or friction point, and one sensory detail that made the day feel vivid. The small victory can be as simple as reached out to a mentor or finished a focused hour of work. The failure is not a condemnation, it is data. The sensory detail could be the bitter taste of coffee while writing, or the warmth of sunlight on the left cheek. These details ground abstract growth in lived experience. After 30 days, patterns will emerge. The log becomes evidence that potential is not merely imagined, it is being tested and reshaped. Create constraints to foster creativity. Ironically, freedom does not always produce growth. Limits do. Give the self a box and see what will fit inside it. Commit to a 30-day constraint. No social media before work. No more than 1 hour of email in the morning. Or a single focus project with a defined daily hour. Constraints reduce the tyranny of choice and force the mind to act. They reveal hidden reserves. When options narrow, determination sharpens. The practice of constraint coincides with a stoic discipline. Prefer what is within control and accept what is not. Energy spent on what cannot be controlled is energy lost. Energy applied to what can be controlled compounds. Courage is required, not as an epic moment, but as consistent refusal to be governed by fear. Fear will offer rational-sounding reasons to stay where it is safe. Not enough time, not skilled enough, what if it fails? Counter fear with precise experiments that cost little but inform a lot. A 1-minute video of a practice talk, a short blog post published anonymously, a quick prototype made from household materials. These micro-actions reduce the power of fear by providing new evidence. Failures will occur, and they will sting. That sting is honest feedback. Treat failure as a teacher, not a verdict. Ask what the failure indicates: missing skill, wrong assumption, or a need for clearer feedback. Then design a corrective 2-step action. Mentorship and mirrors matter. The untapped self often needs 2 things: an external mirror and a trusted voice. A mirror can be a person who reflects reality without flattery, a journal that shows repeated choices, or the measurable output of work. A trusted voice can be a mentor, a coach, or a peer who will hold accountability. Seek one person who will demand progress and another who will notice small improvements. Accountability transforms vague intention into visible movement. If direct mentorship is unavailable, create a substitute, post weekly public updates, join a focused community, or pair with a friend for mutual checks. Public commitment increases follow-through. Daily rituals compound. Build rituals around energy cycles rather than arbitrary clock hours. Identify times of peak clarity and reserve them for your highest value work. Protect those hours with a simple ritual: closing the door, brewing the same tea, or a 2-minute breathing exercise that signals focus. Rituals prime the body and mind. They create psychological continuity that makes showing up easier. Small, consistent rituals: reading 10 pages each night, writing 3 sentences each morning, become daily deposits into potential. Physical care is not optional. The inner landscape depends on the body's soil. Sleep, nourishment, movement, and sunlight affect cognition and resilience. Treat physical care like a strategic investment, not self-indulgence. When the body is tired, decisions degrade. When rested, creativity returns. Schedule, sleep, move in ways that feel satisfying, and eat foods that maintain consistent energy. Notice how simple changes: stretching for 5 minutes upon waking, drinking a glass of water before checking messages, improve attention and mood. These are not glamorous, they are effective. Language shapes identity. Replace vague self-narratives with precise statements of action. "I am an inconsistent writer" is a self-limiting story. Reframe to "I write 3 times a week," or "I produce 1 draft each Friday." Language that names action invites the mind to perform it. Record 3 identity statements that align with the potential being pursued. These should be short, affirmative, and actionable. Speak them in moments of hesitation until the nervous system accepts them as default. Over time, the repetition of chosen language rewires expectation and behavior. Resilience grows through measured exposure to discomfort. Stoicism does not seek pain for its own sake. It conditions readiness. Design small, deliberate exposures to challenge: a cold shower, a day without complaining, a difficult conversation begun early in the week. These controlled stresses strengthen the nervous system and reveal inner resources. They also produce a quiet confidence that is not noisy but reliable. Confidence built gradually through competence resists sudden collapse because it rests on practice rather than circumstance. Finally, hold purpose lightly and progress tightly. Purpose provides a direction, but rigidity breeds brittleness. Remain open to adjustment while keeping daily progress non-negotiable. The craft of reinvention is iterative. Try, measure, adjust, repeat. Celebrate increments without confusing them with final arrival. The mind that associates identity with daily practice will persist through disappointment because identity becomes motion rather than a static badge. Begin today with a small, concrete action. Pick one habit from this chapter and commit to it for the next 30 days. Write the habit down with a clear measurement: what, when, and how long. Tell one accountable person. Record it in the daily log, noting a sensory detail each day. After a month, review the log, adjust the plan, and select the next targeted skill. This cycle: short experiments, careful observation, pivot when necessary, turns inner possibility into outward capability. Growth does not always strike like lightning. More often it arrives like seasons, quiet, relentless, reshaping the landscape in ways that are only visible to those who keep a patient eye. The untapped inner potential lives in the small, consistent actions that are often ignored because they lack drama. Embrace discipline as tenderness toward the future self. Care for the small things now, and the life that follows will be larger, truer, and built on a foundation that no storm can easily topple. Number 2. Break old patterns. Start fresh. Breaking old patterns begins with honest recognition. Patterns are invisible chains stitched into daily routines, thoughts, and reactions. They form quietly, often unnoticed, until their weight shapes every decision, every hesitation, every repeated failure. To start fresh, the first step is to see clearly. Observe your day from the outside, as though you were watching someone else. Notice the triggers that send you down familiar paths: impatience when tasks feel tedious, the automatic response to stress, the habitual retreat into comfort or distraction. These are not flaws, they are signals. They mark the habits that have carried you through life, even if they no longer serve the person you want to become. Old patterns hold power because they are predictable. The mind seeks efficiency and settles into familiar circuits. Comfort feels safe, even when it limits growth. The challenge is to disrupt that efficiency with deliberate action. Begin with small interruptions. Rearrange your environment. Change your workspace, your walking route, or the order of your daily routine. Subtle changes spark awareness. They break autopilot and create a space for intentional choice. When the familiar is shifted, even slightly, the brain awakens and notices new possibilities. Examine the emotional cues behind patterns. Fear, avoidance, pride, and guilt often reinforce repetition. Instead of fighting these emotions, confront them. Label them honestly. This is fear. This is discomfort. This is resistance. Recognition diminishes their unconscious control. Next, question their logic. Ask, does this serve my long-term goals? If the answer is no, commit to a small act that contradicts the pattern. If avoidance is the habit, take one tiny step toward engagement. If distraction is the default, block it purposefully and replace it with meaningful activity. Progress grows from repeated micro-actions that defy the old script. Start fresh by defining what fresh means personally. It is not imitation of someone else's success or a dramatic reinvention for show. It is clarity about the person you wish to be and the life you intend to live. Write down the qualities, behaviors, and routines that align with this vision. Distinguish between what is negotiable and non-negotiable. Non-negotiable habits become anchors. They are the routines that you protect fiercely, waking early to think, completing a key task before distraction, committing to honesty in speech. Negotiable habits can shift gradually. This separation allows transformation without self-sabotage. Patterns are often reinforced by context. Friends, social media, entertainment, environments that encourage repetition. Evaluate these influences with precision. Limit exposure to what reinforces stagnation. Surround yourself with cues that promote growth. A book, a podcast, a supportive peer, or even a physical object can trigger constructive behavior. Replace old triggers with new ones. A notification that prompts a 5-minute reflection, a specific time reserved for learning, a visible reminder of a goal. Change the environment, and the mind follows naturally. Momentum requires rhythm. Breaking patterns is not a single act. It is an ongoing series of deliberate interruptions. Start with a daily ritual that defies an old habit. If the tendency is to scroll endlessly, schedule a precise 15-minute reflection period instead. If procrastination dominates, commit to a focused 20-minute session, then reward completion. Gradually extend these micro-actions. Over time, the brain rewires to recognize the new routine as the default, and resistance diminishes. Celebrate these small victories. They are the foundation of lasting change. Commitment to novelty enhances flexibility. Seek experiences outside the ordinary, even in small doses. Speak to someone you normally would not. Try a new skill or alter your routine in a seemingly trivial way. Novelty disrupts the subconscious autopilot that maintains old patterns. Each small deviation is evidence that you can operate differently. Over time, the mind begins to anticipate adaptability as a norm rather than a stressor. The practice of novelty fosters resilience and courage simultaneously. Self-compassion is essential. Breaking old habits triggers discomfort, frustration, and sometimes self-criticism. Accept these as natural companions on the path to change. Resist the urge to judge or punish. Instead, maintain a steady, disciplined approach. Notice the misstep, analyze its origin, adjust, and proceed. Discipline without harshness cultivates consistency. Harshness breeds avoidance. Remember, transformation is iterative. Progress is not linear, but persistent engagement produces enduring results. Accountability accelerates transformation. Share intentions with a trustworthy person or group. Regular check-ins increase commitment and visibility. Even the act of verbalizing a new habit strengthens adherence because it moves the goal from thought to obligation. Documenting your progress through a journal, calendar, or digital tracker reinforces self-awareness and provides concrete feedback. Reflection converts raw effort into insight. Look back weekly and note where the old pattern still exerts influence, where you have made gains, and what adjustments are necessary. Language shapes reality. Reframe self-talk to align with change rather than reinforce stagnation. Replace phrases like "I always" or "I can't" with specific actionable statements. "I will respond differently today," or "I will choose action over avoidance." Language directs attention and energy. Each statement of intent strengthens the neural pathways necessary for new behavior. Speak deliberately, and the mind begins to follow. Breaking patterns often requires letting go of identity attachments. Many habits feel unavoidable because they are woven into the story of who I am. Yet, identity is malleable. Define yourself by action, not by past repetition. Choose the behaviors that align with your vision, and recognize that identity is the accumulation of repeated choices, not static labels. The courage to act outside familiar roles expands capability and self-respect simultaneously. Discomfort is a signal of growth. When resistance rises, lean into it strategically. Engage deliberately with the situations or actions that provoke old responses. Observe the sensations, analyze the triggers, and practice alternative responses. Each encounter reduces the dominance of old patterns. Repetition transforms discomfort into a familiar ally, a marker that progress is occurring. The mind and body gradually internalize new norms, and freedom increases. Integration completes the process. New habits and behaviors must coexist with the complexity of life. Avoid extremes that isolate practice from reality. Blend deliberate actions with spontaneity, reflection with engagement, discipline with creativity. Integration ensures that the fresh start is sustainable, embedded into the rhythms of daily living rather than confined to isolated attempts. Patterns will return if change is only performed in isolation. True transformation requires seamless incorporation. Celebrate incremental progress. Even minor deviations from old habits signal latent strength. A single conscious choice to respond differently than automatic impulse reinforces the possibility of broader transformation. Track these moments, honor them internally, and allow them to become the foundation for confidence. The path of reinvention is cumulative. Each successful interruption of an old pattern compounds into larger shifts in behavior, thinking, and resilience. Finally, cultivate curiosity toward the self. Approach change with investigative rigor rather than judgment. Ask questions. Why do I react this way? What am I avoiding? What small shift could create the greatest improvement? Curiosity transforms effort from struggle into exploration. The mind becomes an ally rather than a battleground. Observation, experimentation, and adjustment are not burdens. They are methods for liberation. The journey of breaking old patterns is lifelong, but each deliberate act chips away at inertia. Life becomes a series of conscious choices rather than habitual drift. With clarity, structure, and courage, patterns that once constrained behavior transform into stepping stones toward freedom. A fresh start is not a singular event. It is a process of disciplined, consistent reinvention that touches thought, action, emotion, and environment. Each day presents an opportunity to disrupt the familiar, embrace the unknown, and move closer to the self one is capable of becoming. The first step is immediate. Identify a single pattern that no longer serves growth. Observe it carefully. Design one deliberate action to oppose it today. Repeat tomorrow, refining the approach. Through small, persistent efforts, the chain of old habits breaks. Space opens. Breath deepens. Movement becomes intentional. Life unfolds with new energy, and the person who once felt trapped in repetition discovers the exhilarating freedom of choosing differently. The world responds to action, and within every choice lies the power to start fresh. Number 3. Redefine identity through conscious choices. Identity is not something inherited or fixed. It is a collection of choices, repeated over time, that define how the world experiences us and how we experience ourselves. Every action, no matter how small, whispers to the mind and the body about who we are and who we are becoming. Redefining identity begins with the recognition that the self is a canvas, not a cage. The paintbrush is in the hand, and each stroke matters. It requires the courage to confront existing labels and the discipline to choose deliberately what will shape the next version of oneself. Start by examining current self-conceptions. Many identities are borrowed from family expectations, societal pressures, or past experiences. Some of these labels are helpful, some neutral, and some constraining. Observe without judgment. Make a list of the roles, habits, and self-descriptions that dominate thought. I am always late. I am shy. I cannot manage money. Seeing these clearly allows awareness to operate. Awareness itself is the first act of freedom. When you identify a limiting self-definition, it is no longer invisible. It becomes subject to conscious choice. Next, define the person you intend to become through precise, actionable language. Replace vague aspirations with concrete statements that can guide daily behavior. Instead of "I want to be successful," specify "I will complete 3 focused work sessions daily." Instead of "I want to be confident," clarify "I will speak in meetings without hesitation 3 times per week." The act of writing identity in terms of behavior transforms abstract ideas into measurable steps. Identity is less about feeling and more about repeated practice that shapes perception internally and externally. Every choice reinforces identity. Life presents continuous opportunities to act in alignment with the self you intend to become. Each decision is either a brick in the foundation of the new identity or a crack that weakens it. Begin with small, consistent choices that are noticeable but manageable. If the aim is discipline, start with 1 repeated habit. Waking early, completing a physical routine, or dedicating 20 minutes to focused learning. The mind measures identity by repetition, not intention. Consistency is what converts a conceptual self into an experienced reality. The power of reflection amplifies choice. Allocate time each day to review decisions, actions, and emotional responses. Ask, which actions today were consistent with the person I intend to be? Which actions were habitual or reactive? This reflection converts experience into understanding. It reveals patterns that were previously unconscious and uncovers subtle ways in which old identity templates persist. Reflection need not be elaborate. Even a 5-minute review before sleep can illuminate areas requiring attention and adjustment. Language and internal dialogue are fundamental tools in identity formation. The words used to describe the self in thought and speech are not passive. They actively shape perception. Replace self-critical or limiting language with deliberate affirmations of capability and intentionality. Each sentence spoken internally or externally reinforces neural pathways associated with chosen behavior. For example, transforming "I struggle with consistency" into "I act consistently in the tasks I prioritize" shifts the focus from limitation to action. Over time, this language rewires the unconscious mind to recognize new norms as default. Environment exerts profound influence on identity. People, physical spaces, and routines silently shape who we believe ourselves to be. Curate surroundings that support desired identity traits. Seek companions who exemplify values or behaviors you wish to embody. Remove visual or social cues that reinforce the outdated self. Even subtle environmental tweaks, organizing a workspace, changing the route to work, or arranging time for uninterrupted reflection, can reinforce conscious choices. Context informs identity as much as deliberate effort. Choose it wisely. Redefining identity requires confronting fear directly. Fear often arises as the mind resists change, clinging to old self-conceptions for comfort or security. A new identity threatens the familiar, even when the familiar limits growth. Face fear through graduated exposure. Small, deliberate acts that stretch beyond comfort zones without overwhelming them. Speaking openly in a group, practicing a new skill, or initiating an uncomfortable conversation are ways to assert control over fear. Each successful act of courage strengthens the belief in personal agency, and the cumulative effect gradually reshapes identity from reactive to intentional. Deliberate habits are the backbone of the new identity. Habits automate choice in alignment with goals, reducing reliance on fluctuating willpower. Establish routines that reinforce the desired self-image. If the aim is resilience, incorporate practices that foster emotional regulation, physical endurance, or thoughtful reflection. If creativity is the target, dedicate time to experimentation, observation, and expression. Structured repetition solidifies identity traits, embedding them in both conscious and subconscious decision-making. The more automatic the behavior becomes, the more authentic the new identity feels. Accountability accelerates transformation. Share intentions with mentors, peers, or structured communities that encourage growth. External accountability provides feedback, recognition, and reinforcement. It transforms abstract goals into commitments with visible consequences. Even brief weekly reports or shared reflections can strengthen alignment between chosen behaviors and the evolving identity. The awareness that others observe progress magnifies motivation, and consistent feedback highlights areas where old patterns linger. Accountability acts as a mirror, reflecting both strength and areas for improvement, guiding the redefinition process. Embrace intentional pauses. Decisions shape identity, but reflection deepens insight. Integrate moments of stillness to assess ongoing alignment with desired traits. During these pauses, ask, did today's actions reflect who I intend to be? Where did I default to old behaviors? This practice illuminates unconscious tendencies and provides opportunities to course-correct before patterns harden. Pauses need not be lengthy. Short daily intervals of focused contemplation yield profound awareness over time. The mind becomes more responsive and less reactive, reinforcing conscious choice as a central principle of identity. Self-compassion is critical. Transformation involves experimentation, failure, and discomfort. Treat mistakes as data, not judgment. Reframe missteps as evidence of effort and as indicators for refinement. Harsh self-criticism erodes progress, while patient reflection fosters resilience. A conscious identity is built on learning from action, adjusting deliberately, and continuing with disciplined persistence. Each misstep offers insight that, when applied, accelerates alignment with the person one intends to become. Identity evolves in layers. Begin with visible behaviors, then integrate thoughts, language, and emotional responses. Each layer reinforces the others. Action informs belief, which shapes emotion, which cycles back to guide further action. Conscious choices in each domain strengthen coherence, producing a self that is authentic and aligned. Fragmentation arises when behaviors contradict intentions. Integration arises when every choice is deliberate. Over time, repetition and reflection solidify the new identity, making it resistant to regression. Curiosity fuels refinement. Approach identity as a laboratory for discovery. Experiment with approaches to tasks, responses to stress, and modes of interaction. Observe results and adjust deliberately. Each experiment adds nuance and precision to self-conception. Curiosity prevents rigidity, encouraging adaptation while maintaining alignment with core values. It transforms the process from a struggle against self to an investigation of capacity, possibility, and potential. The evolution of identity is continuous. It is not a destination, but an ongoing practice of deliberate choice. Life provides opportunities to reinforce or challenge the self-definition in every moment. Small, consistent actions compound, producing remarkable transformation over months and years. Even subtle adjustments, speaking with greater clarity, acting with intentional patience, prioritizing meaningful effort, accumulate to redefine the self entirely. The person you intend to become is constructed moment by moment, choice by choice. Begin immediately by selecting one domain to refine, a thought pattern, a habitual action, or a response style. Make a single, measurable choice today that aligns with the identity you wish to embody. Observe the outcome. Adjust as needed, and repeat tomorrow. Build upon small successes, layer habits, integrate reflection, and expand conscious choices. The iterative process of attention, action, and adjustment turns abstract aspirations into tangible selfhood. Through deliberate, repeated choice, identity transforms from inherited and reactive to intentional and empowered. Redefining identity through conscious choices is the foundation of self-mastery. Each action, each word, each deliberate pause contributes to a self that is resilient, capable, and authentic. Over time, the accumulation of disciplined, intentional decisions replaces outdated narratives with an empowered, flexible, and purpose-driven identity. The mind and body internalize these choices, producing alignment between who you are and who you are becoming. Identity ceases to be a passive inheritance and becomes an artful creation, sculpted by conscious, persistent, and intentional action. Number 4. Embrace change. Conquer self-doubt. Change is inevitable, yet it often arrives with discomfort, uncertainty, and resistance. The mind instinctively clings to familiarity, to routines that feel secure, even when they no longer serve growth. Embracing change requires more than acceptance. It requires active engagement, a willingness to move forward when the path is unclear, and the discipline to confront internal hesitation with clarity and courage. Change is not merely a response to external circumstances. It is a deliberate choice to evolve, to stretch beyond the known, and refine the self continuously. Begin by acknowledging the areas of life that are rigid or stagnant. Observe without judgment the habits, beliefs, or relationships that no longer align with growth. This is not criticism, it is awareness. Awareness reveals opportunities. Each pattern that feels constrictive is a doorway to transformation. Identify the precise aspects of life where change is necessary, whether in thought, behavior, environment, or emotional response. Clarity is the first act of courage, because it illuminates what requires attention. Without knowing what must evolve, energy dissipates on inertia rather than progress. Self-doubt often accompanies the anticipation of change. It whispers that failure is inevitable, that ability is insufficient, and that the comfort of the familiar is preferable to the risk of the unknown. Recognize self-doubt as a natural companion rather than a signal to retreat. Label its presence honestly. This is hesitation. This is fear of uncertainty. Naming it separates the emotion from identity. Once separated, doubt becomes an object to be examined, understood, and strategically countered. Break self-doubt into manageable components. Often it is anchored in specific beliefs. I am not skilled enough. I cannot adapt. I will embarrass myself. Examine each belief rigorously. Test its validity with evidence from experience. Identify instances where skills were acquired, challenges were overcome, and unfamiliar situations were mastered. The brain cannot resist concrete examples. By systematically confronting each self-limiting thought with evidence, doubt diminishes, leaving room for informed action rather than paralyzing hesitation. Action is the antidote to fear. Deliberate, incremental steps transform uncertainty into momentum. Begin with small challenges that stretch capabilities without overwhelming them. Each completed action builds confidence and proves adaptability. For instance, if public speaking feels daunting, start by articulating thoughts aloud in private, then to a trusted friend, then in a small group. Each stage affirms competence and reinforces the capacity to handle progressively larger challenges. Incremental exposure to change fosters resilience and diminishes the automatic pull of self-doubt. Mindset shapes the experience of change. Adopt the perspective that each transition is an opportunity for growth rather than a threat. View mistakes and setbacks as data rather than indictments. The mind interprets events through narratives. By framing change as a journey of learning, uncertainty transforms into exploration. Each misstep becomes insight, and each discomfort becomes a signal that the boundaries of capability are expanding. This perspective reduces emotional resistance and increases engagement with the process of transformation. Control is often an illusion, yet focusing on what is controllable provides a sense of agency. While external circumstances may fluctuate unpredictably, personal choices, how one responds, what actions are taken, and how priorities are set, remain within influence. Concentrate energy on deliberate decisions, incremental improvements, and consistent practice. Small actions compound over time, producing visible, tangible progress. By focusing on controllable elements, the mind gains confidence and self-doubt loses influence. Preparation enhances adaptability. Equip yourself with knowledge, skills, and resources that reduce uncertainty. Anticipate challenges realistically and plan responses. Preparation is not a guarantee of smooth outcomes, but it creates a foundation for competent action. The more informed and ready one feels, the less room remains for hesitation to dictate behavior. Competence begets confidence, and confidence diminishes self-doubt, making the process of change smoother and more sustainable. Emotional resilience is essential. Change provokes discomfort because it disrupts familiar patterns, triggering stress, frustration, and impatience. Cultivate practices that stabilize emotional response. Mindfulness, reflection, journaling, or focused physical activity. Observe emotions without judgment and allow them to exist without dictating action. Emotional regulation ensures that decisions align with deliberate goals rather than reactive impulses. Resilience transforms turbulence into an opportunity to refine self-discipline, patience, and adaptability. Environmental cues strongly influence the capacity to embrace change. Surround yourself with stimuli that encourage growth and challenge comfort zones. Seek relationships, communities, and mentors that embody adaptability, courage, and progress. Remove elements that reinforce stagnation or amplify doubt. Even subtle environmental shifts, workspace arrangement, digital consumption, or social interactions shape perception and behavior. Context becomes a silent partner in reinforcing the mindset required to engage change proactively. Visualization strengthens readiness. Mentally rehearsing new behaviors and potential outcomes prepares the mind for execution. Picture challenges, responses, and successful results in vivid detail. Include physical sensations, emotional states, and cognitive clarity. Visualization is a form of pre-experience that primes the nervous system, reducing fear and uncertainty when the actual moment arrives. It converts abstract possibility into tangible expectation, reinforcing confidence and reducing hesitation. Accountability accelerates engagement with change. Share intentions with trusted individuals or groups who can provide feedback, encouragement, and honest evaluation. External accountability increases commitment and motivation. Regular updates, reflections, or progress tracking create external reinforcement that supports internal discipline. By combining internal intention with external verification, the probability of sustained action increases, and self-doubt is confronted with reality-based evidence of capability. Time-bound experimentation fosters flexibility. Approach change as a series of trials rather than absolute commitments. Assign short durations to new habits, behaviors, or skills. 7 days, 2 weeks, 30 days, and observe results objectively. Evaluate effectiveness, adapt strategies, and continue or pivot accordingly. Short-term experiments reduce the weight of fear by framing change as exploratory rather than permanent. Each trial becomes an opportunity to gather insight and build confidence without the pressure of perfection. Celebrate micro-progress. Small wins accumulate into significant transformations. Every instance of acting in alignment with change, regardless of scale, reinforces capability. Acknowledge completed actions, learned lessons, and moments of courage. Recognition of micro-successes signals to the brain that effort produces results, encouraging continued engagement. Positive reinforcement strengthens identity as someone capable of adapting and thriving in uncertainty. Curiosity diminishes the grip of self-doubt. Approach new situations as opportunities to learn rather than tests of ability. Questions like, "What can I discover here?" or "What skill can I practice?" shift focus from fear of failure to exploration. Curiosity transforms challenge into engagement, and engagement strengthens confidence. The mind begins to associate change with opportunity rather than risk, creating a self-reinforcing loop of competence and courage. Physical preparedness supports mental adaptability. Energy, alertness, and resilience are influenced by nutrition, movement, and rest. Change requires sustained attention and controlled response, which diminishes when the body is depleted. Integrate regular movement, restorative sleep, and mindful nutrition to ensure that physical state enhances cognitive and emotional flexibility. The body becomes an ally in embracing transformation rather than a limiting factor. Long-term adaptation depends on iteration. Change is rarely linear. Progress involves experimentation, adjustment, and repeated practice. Each encounter with uncertainty strengthens neural pathways associated with problem-solving, resilience, and skill acquisition. Document observations, adjust strategies, and refine habits consistently. Over time, adaptability becomes an ingrained characteristic rather than a situational response. The person evolves into someone capable of handling uncertainty with competence and calm. Begin immediately with a focused action that challenges comfort. Select one task, decision, or behavior that requires adaptation. Approach it deliberately, observe internal responses, and note outcomes. Repeat daily, gradually increasing complexity or scope. Each act builds confidence, diminishes self-doubt, and reinforces the capacity to embrace change. The accumulation of these consistent actions transforms apprehension into agency. Change and self-doubt are intertwined. Progress requires addressing both simultaneously. By observing current limitations, taking incremental action, cultivating resilience, managing environment, and fostering curiosity, it is possible to engage transformation without being paralyzed by fear. Each deliberate step strengthens the mind's capacity for adaptation, reshaping internal narratives and external behaviors. Over time, embracing change becomes not only manageable, but a source of strength, clarity, and renewed purpose. Number 5. Transform setbacks into growth opportunities. Setbacks are not the end of the journey. They are pivotal moments where growth begins. Every failure, disappointment, or obstacle carries within it a lesson that, when understood, strengthens resilience and refines strategy. The difference between those who stagnate and those who thrive is not the absence of setbacks, but the way they are perceived and addressed. Growth does not emerge from comfort, it emerges from confronting difficulty with intention, reflection, and persistence. Transforming setbacks into growth opportunities starts with changing the lens through which challenges are viewed. The first step is honest evaluation. When faced with a setback, pause and examine the situation without self-condemnation. Identify the specific factors that contributed to the outcome. Break the event into discrete elements: decisions made, actions taken, environmental influences, timing, and resources available. This dissection turns overwhelming failure into manageable pieces. By understanding each component, it becomes possible to recognize which elements are within control and which are not. This distinction prevents wasted energy on blame and focuses attention on actionable insight. Perspective is critical. A setback is not a reflection of inherent inadequacy, but a signal that adaptation is required. Reframing the experience as information rather than judgment converts frustration into clarity. Ask, what can this teach me? What skills, knowledge, or mindset adjustments are necessary to respond differently next time? Approaching challenges as teachers rather than punishers shifts the emotional charge, allowing rational analysis and strategic planning to emerge. The mind begins to see opportunity where fear previously dominated. Emotional management is essential during setbacks. Disappointment, anger, and discouragement are natural, but unchecked, they can obscure insight and inhibit action. Acknowledge emotions without letting them dictate behavior. Naming emotions, this is frustration, this is regret, creates distance from them. Once emotions are recognized, channel energy into productive reflection and deliberate problem solving. Emotional regulation transforms the experience of setback into a controlled environment for growth. Incremental response is more effective than drastic reaction. The instinctive desire to overcorrect can lead to erratic behavior. Instead, define small, concrete steps that address the core issues revealed by the setback. If a project failed due to poor planning, revise the process with specific checkpoints. If communication caused misunderstanding, develop precise messaging strategies for future interactions. Incremental adjustments build confidence and generate measurable progress, reinforcing the understanding that setbacks are not final verdicts, but opportunities for refinement. Observation strengthens understanding. Look beyond personal experience to learn from others who have faced similar obstacles. Study case studies, biographies, or narratives of individuals who overcame significant challenges. Identify patterns in their approach: persistence, strategic pivoting, emotional regulation, and reflective practice. Learning from external examples provides a broader perspective and demonstrates that setbacks are universal and surmountable. It also offers practical tactics that can be adapted to individual circumstances. Journaling amplifies insight. Document the setback in detail, including context, decisions, outcomes, and emotional responses. Include reflections on what was learned and what could be done differently. Over time, patterns emerge, revealing repeated vulnerabilities and opportunities for skill development. Writing consolidates understanding and transforms transient experiences into concrete reference points. The act of recording also reduces cognitive overload and allows for objective reassessment without the distortion of immediate emotional reactions. Reframing failure as experimentation encourages courage. Each setback can be viewed as data from a real-world test. Consider what hypothesis was being tested, what variables affected the outcome, and what the results indicate about next steps. Experimentation implies curiosity and control rather than defeat. By viewing challenges as experiments, risk is normalized and failure becomes informative rather than punitive. This approach fosters resilience, adaptability, and proactive decision-making. Actionable learning is key. Transform insight into specific changes in behavior, strategy, or perspective. Identify 1 or 2 actionable adjustments immediately following reflection. Implement these changes consistently. By translating lessons into action, setbacks are converted from abstract experience into tangible growth. Each applied insight compounds, creating a trajectory of continuous improvement. Action transforms the mental understanding of failure into concrete competence. Resilience grows through repetition. Each challenge faced and addressed strengthens the capacity to handle future obstacles. Developing resilience involves more than enduring difficulty. It involves engaging with difficulty, analyzing outcomes, adjusting strategies, and applying lessons consistently. Over time, setbacks become less threatening, as each instance reinforces the understanding that obstacles are navigable with disciplined thought and deliberate effort. Resilience is a muscle strengthened through repeated use. Mindset influences perception of setbacks. A growth-oriented mindset views challenges as opportunities to expand skills, deepen understanding, and refine judgment. In contrast, a fixed mindset interprets setbacks as reflections of innate limitation. Cultivate the belief that abilities can be developed through effort and deliberate practice. This mindset creates an internal environment where failure is not feared but welcomed as a necessary ingredient of advancement. It transforms disappointment into curiosity, frustration into investigation, and loss into preparation. Strategic patience complements effort. Immediate results are rare. Growth often manifests gradually. Resist the temptation to expect instant transformation following a setback. Maintain consistent action, document progress, and allow insight to accumulate. Patience fosters deeper learning and reduces the emotional intensity of failure. Recognizing that growth is iterative encourages persistent engagement and prevents discouragement from halting progress prematurely. Feedback is invaluable. Seek perspectives from those who observe your efforts objectively. External feedback identifies blind spots, confirms accurate assessments, and highlights potential solutions. Approach feedback without defensiveness, extracting actionable insights while discarding irrelevant commentary. The combination of self-analysis and external input creates a robust framework for transforming setbacks into actionable growth. Adaptability is central to leveraging setbacks. Situations change, and strategies that worked previously may fail under new conditions. Flexibility in approach allows for continuous refinement and adjustment. Experiment with alternative solutions, test new methods, and observe results. Adaptation converts frustration into proactive problem-solving and prevents stagnation caused by rigid adherence to ineffective strategies. Celebrate learning, not just success. Acknowledge the skill gained, the insight uncovered, or the emotional strength developed, even if the external outcome was undesirable. Reinforcing learning rather than outcome ensures that growth is recognized independently of immediate success. Each instance of insight becomes a permanent addition to capability, reinforcing the understanding that setbacks contribute to long-term competence rather than short-term failure. Visualization reinforces preparedness. Mentally rehearse future scenarios where previous setbacks might have occurred. Picture appropriate responses, anticipated obstacles, and effective adjustments. Visualization primes the mind and reduces uncertainty when similar challenges arise. It strengthens confidence and accelerates the application of lessons learned, making setbacks less intimidating and more manageable when encountered again. Physical and mental self-care supports resilience during setbacks. Adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, regular movement, and mindful practices maintain clarity, focus, and energy. A well-prepared body and mind respond more effectively to challenges, think critically, and apply lessons efficiently. Neglecting self-care increases vulnerability to discouragement, amplifies stress, and reduces capacity to transform setbacks into growth. Long-term growth emerges from cumulative application. Each setback offers a fragment of insight. Repeated reflection, adjustment, and action assemble these fragments into coherent improvement. Over time, the individual develops sharper judgment, greater emotional regulation, increased strategic thinking, and reinforced persistence. The trajectory of personal evolution accelerates as setbacks are transformed into building blocks rather than stumbling blocks. Begin immediately by selecting one recent setback. Analyze it thoroughly, noting decisions, context, and emotional responses. Identify actionable adjustments and implement at least one immediately. Monitor the outcome, reflect on insights, and iterate. Through this process, setbacks cease to be obstacles and become engines of growth. Each deliberate engagement with difficulty strengthens capability, confidence, and the understanding that challenges are integral to meaningful progress. Setbacks are the crucible in which resilience, wisdom, and competence are forged. When approached with analysis, action, and reflection, obstacles transform into opportunities to expand skill, deepen understanding, and reinforce confidence. Growth is not a byproduct of unbroken success, but of engaged confrontation with difficulty. By consistently converting setbacks into learning experiences, the individual cultivates the strength, adaptability, and insight necessary to navigate life with competence and purpose. Number 6. Rebuild confidence. One step daily. Confidence is not granted overnight. It is reconstructed gradually, like the careful assembly of a structure from scattered fragments. Each small, deliberate action reinforces the sense of capability, gradually replacing doubt with trust in one's own abilities. The process begins with recognition that confidence is not an innate trait, but a skill, one that can be nurtured, strengthened, and refined through consistent practice. Rebuilding it requires patience, focused effort, and a willingness to step into discomfort repeatedly until competence becomes familiar and natural. Start with self-awareness. Observe areas where confidence feels weak, and identify specific triggers that provoke hesitation, fear, or uncertainty. These moments provide critical insight into the underlying beliefs and experiences that have eroded self-assurance. For instance, public speaking might provoke nervousness, or decision-making may create hesitation. Document these triggers with detail, the context, the emotional response, and the thoughts accompanying it. Awareness transforms vague anxiety into actionable data, revealing the precise points where attention is required. Action is the foundation of confidence. Begin with small, achievable steps that stretch capability just beyond current comfort. These micro-actions are significant because they accumulate over time. A single small success triggers physiological responses, an increased heart rate, a sense of mastery, and mental reinforcement that consolidate self-belief. Repetition of these manageable challenges gradually rewires the mind to associate effort with competence rather than failure, building momentum for progressively larger undertakings. Incremental progress is crucial. Attempting drastic feats too soon risks failure that can reinforce self-doubt. Instead, design a daily regimen of achievable tasks that reinforce skill, presence, and capability. For example, if social confidence is the target, begin by initiating brief conversations with acquaintances, then gradually engage with new groups. Each step builds a chain of successes that strengthens the neural pathways associated with assurance, making confidence increasingly habitual and internalized. Reflection amplifies growth. At the end of each day, review actions taken and evaluate their alignment with desired confidence-building goals. Ask, where did I act with competence? Where did hesitation occur? What patterns emerged that I can adjust tomorrow? Reflection converts daily activity into learning, ensuring that experience is not passive. Over time, repeated review sharpens self-understanding and clarifies strategies for continued growth, allowing setbacks to become insight rather than discouragement. Language shapes self-perception. The way one speaks internally and externally influences the mind's interpretation of capability. Replace self-limiting phrases with statements of action and empowerment. I am unsure becomes I am learning to respond effectively. I cannot handle this transforms into I will take measured steps to manage this. Each verbal adjustment reinforces new cognitive frameworks, signaling to the brain that competence is being exercised, which reinforces confidence in both thought and behavior. Body language is an unspoken declaration of confidence. Posture, eye contact, and controlled movement communicate self-assurance to both the external world and the internal mind. Standing tall, walking deliberately, and maintaining calm composure sends messages of competence to neural pathways, reinforcing internal belief. Daily practice of conscious body alignment strengthens the physiological foundation of confidence, creating a feedback loop where posture, mindset, and action mutually reinforce each other. Small victories accumulate. Each success, no matter how minor, is evidence of capability. Recognize and record these moments. Completing a task effectively, speaking clearly in a meeting, or navigating a challenging conversation. The brain responds to tangible evidence. A growing ledger of accomplishments solidifies belief in ability and demonstrates progress that might otherwise be overlooked. Over time, these micro-wins compound, creating a sense of mastery that underpins authentic confidence. Routine fortifies belief. Consistency establishes reliability in personal performance. Define a set of daily practices that reinforce skills, knowledge, and emotional control. Repetition consolidates competence into habit, reducing reliance on fluctuating motivation or self-assurance. Structured routines transform effort into automatic responses, making confidence less dependent on circumstance and more embedded in daily behavior. Discipline creates a stable foundation upon which self-assurance can flourish. Visualize success. Mental rehearsal primes the nervous system for effective execution. Picture yourself performing tasks successfully, navigating challenges with calm, and responding decisively. Include sensory details, the physical environment, the tone of voice, the emotional state associated with accomplishment. Visualization prepares the mind to act confidently under pressure, reduces anxiety, and increases precision when actual performance occurs. Daily mental practice reinforces physical and cognitive preparedness simultaneously. Embrace failure as a learning tool. Confidence is strengthened not by avoiding mistakes, but by responding constructively to them. Analyze errors objectively, identify what went wrong, extract actionable lessons, and apply them moving forward. Each failure becomes a blueprint for refinement, rather than a verdict on ability. The consistent integration of insight from missteps builds a durable, resilient form of confidence grounded in experience rather than illusion. Accountability accelerates progress. Sharing goals with a trusted peer, mentor, or group creates external reinforcement. Regularly reporting actions or seeking feedback heightens awareness of performance and commitment. External observation magnifies internal diligence and ensures that small steps toward confidence are recognized and adjusted when necessary. Accountability transforms isolated efforts into a structured growth process, enhancing both reliability and self-trust. Challenge the self deliberately. Confidence grows when boundaries are tested in controlled ways. Identify one area where hesitation dominates and take a calculated step to engage. The purpose is not reckless risk, but measured exposure that stretches competence. Over time, repeated exposure to controlled challenges expands the threshold of comfort, transforming previously intimidating situations into familiar terrain. Gradual expansion of experience reinforces the understanding that capability is a learned, active skill. Mindset is the lens through which confidence is viewed. Cultivate a belief that growth is continuous and attainable through effort. Replace catastrophic thinking with analytical problem solving. Internalize the notion that preparation, practice, and reflection generate capability. A constructive mindset frames challenges as opportunities to refine skill, increasing perseverance and reducing susceptibility to self-doubt. Cognitive framing is a powerful determinant of performance and assurance. Preparation reduces uncertainty. Confidence is often undermined by lack of clarity or readiness. Approach tasks with deliberate planning, outline objectives, anticipate obstacles, and rehearse responses. Preparing systematically increases competence, reduces cognitive load, and instills calm in the face of challenge. The combination of preparation and incremental action ensures that performance aligns with internal expectations, reinforcing a sense of control and self-efficacy. Gratitude reinforces perception of progress. Recognize aspects of skill, knowledge, and resilience that have already been cultivated. Appreciating what has been mastered fosters a positive internal narrative and counterbalances the tendency to fixate on deficits. Gratitude strengthens motivation, reduces anxiety about performance, and provides perspective, allowing each day's effort to contribute meaningfully to long-term confidence. Integration of skill, reflection, and action consolidates transformation. Confidence is most durable when it is embedded across cognitive, emotional, and behavioral domains. Thought, speech, posture, and habit must all align with the desired self-perception. Incoherence between internal belief and external action undermines self-assurance. Consistent alignment reinforces authenticity and reliability. Over time, the integration of these elements produces a self-sustaining cycle of competence and trust in one's own ability. Begin immediately with one concrete action. Identify a specific task that challenges current self-assurance. Approach it deliberately, reflect afterward on what was successful, adjust strategy for improvement, and repeat tomorrow. By committing to daily incremental steps, confidence is reconstructed piece by piece. Each repetition compounds, producing durable self-trust and a sense of mastery that extends into all areas of life. Rebuilding confidence is not about instant transformation or external validation. It is about daily commitment to self-awareness, intentional action, reflection, and adjustment. The accumulation of small, consistent efforts produces competence that is observable, measurable, and internalized. Over time, the individual emerges with a strengthened sense of capability, capable of facing challenges with calm determination and deliberate choice. Confidence becomes not a fleeting feeling, but a reliable foundation upon which growth and achievement can flourish. Number 7. Release limiting beliefs. Thrive boldly. Limiting beliefs are invisible barriers, quietly shaping thought, emotion, and behavior, Often without conscious awareness, they convince the mind of restrictions that do not exist, whispering that certain achievements are impossible, that failure is inevitable, or that personal potential is capped. Releasing these beliefs begins with the recognition that they are constructs, mental patterns formed from past experiences, societal conditioning, or internalized criticism. They are not truths, but assumptions that have been repeated often enough to feel real. Understanding this distinction is the first step toward freedom. Awareness is the foundation of release. Begin by observing thoughts, especially those that provoke hesitation, fear, or self-doubt. Document statements like "I'm not creative enough," "I can't succeed," or "I'm not worthy." Trace each belief to its origin. Often, these narratives are relics of childhood experiences, failed attempts, or external criticism. Seeing the source allows detachment. The belief no longer defines the present but becomes a pattern to analyze and transform. Awareness is the lens through which change begins, illuminating what was once invisible. Challenge assumptions rigorously. For every limiting belief identified, ask, "Is this factually true? What evidence supports it? What evidence contradicts it?" This analytical approach deconstructs the belief, revealing gaps, exaggerations, or outright falsehoods. Often, the mind accepts these patterns as absolute without questioning. Systematically dissecting them replaces automatic acceptance with critical evaluation. The practice of evidence-based reflection weakens the power of false narratives over time. Replace restriction with possibility. Once a limiting belief is recognized and challenged, consciously create a new empowering narrative. If the mind says, "I cannot lead effectively," replace it with, "I am learning the skills and experiences necessary to guide with clarity." The new belief does not need to feel fully realized immediately. It gains strength through repeated affirmation, deliberate action, and evidence from lived experience. Language shapes perception, and intentional phrasing rewires thought patterns toward growth. Action reinforces transformation. Beliefs are maintained through behavior. Each time a limiting belief dictates choice, it is strengthened. Counter this by taking deliberate steps that contradict the restriction. If fear of failure prevents engagement in a project, commit to completing a small, measurable part of it. Every act that defies the limiting narrative weakens its authority. Repetition of these empowering behaviors gradually reshapes identity, demonstrating that limitations exist only when unquestioned and unchallenged. Curiosity accelerates change. Explore areas previously avoided due to limiting beliefs. Experiment with unfamiliar tasks, social situations, or intellectual challenges. Observe outcomes objectively. Curiosity shifts focus from judgment to investigation, reducing emotional resistance and fear. Each exploration creates evidence that previous assumptions may have been exaggerated or unfounded. Curiosity transforms perceived threats into opportunities for discovery and skill development. Visual and mental rehearsal supports the release of restriction. Envision yourself acting without constraint, succeeding in areas previously avoided. Include sensory detail, physical movement, tone of voice, emotional state. Mental rehearsal primes neural pathways and prepares the mind and body for execution, making real-world action feel achievable rather than intimidating. Visualization reduces anxiety and reinforces the possibility of thriving boldly, strengthening both internal belief and outward action. Environment influences beliefs more than is often realized. Surround yourself with people, ideas, and experiences that reinforce potential rather than limitation. Seek mentors, peers, and communities that embody the traits and accomplishments you aspire to achieve. Remove sources of negativity, whether critical voices, discouraging media, or unsupportive routines. The environment functions as a constant reminder of what is possible, reinforcing the dissolution of restrictive patterns. Journaling strengthens insight and commitment. Write down each limiting belief, its origins, and the empowering alternatives being adopted. Track progress daily by noting situations where old beliefs surfaced and how they were consciously countered. Over time, the documentation reveals transformation and highlights persistent patterns requiring additional focus. Writing consolidates cognitive change, turning abstract intention into tangible evidence of progress. Reflection enhances resilience. After acting against a limiting belief, review the experience critically. Identify what worked, what felt uncomfortable, and what can be improved. Reflection converts each challenge into a lesson, further weakening the hold of restriction. Over time, repeated reflection creates a feedback loop in which empowering beliefs are strengthened and old limitations fade. Deliberate evaluation ensures that each encounter contributes to cumulative growth. Emotional regulation is key. Limiting beliefs often provoke anxiety, shame, or self-doubt. Learning to observe and manage these emotions without succumbing to them preserves focus and intentionality. Techniques such as controlled breathing, mindfulness, or brief periods of stillness enable clarity in the face of internal resistance. Emotional mastery prevents instinctive retreat and ensures that empowerment is reinforced by action rather than interrupted by reactive fear. Incremental exposure compounds effectiveness. Begin with small challenges that stretch the perceived boundary of capability. Each successful navigation reinforces confidence and demonstrates the falsity of prior restrictions. Gradually escalate the scope and complexity of challenges. Over time, tasks that once seemed impossible become routine, and the mind internalizes the reality that limitations were constructs rather than inevitabilities. Accountability accelerates the release of limiting beliefs. Share intentions and progress with trusted individuals who can provide feedback, perspective, and reinforcement. External validation does not create belief. It amplifies evidence already established by action. Reporting successes, challenges, and adjustments ensures that internal efforts are recognized and that patterns of limitation are actively countered through observation and discussion. Mindset frames the interpretation of setbacks. When old beliefs resurface, approach them as signals for further investigation rather than confirmation of inability. Ask, what am I learning? How can I respond differently? Viewing obstacles as information rather than judgment preserves momentum, strengthens resilience, and accelerates the internalization of empowering beliefs. Celebration consolidates progress. Recognize each instance of acting beyond perceived limits, completing tasks previously avoided, or speaking up when hesitation dominated. Acknowledging success reinforces new neural pathways, signaling that thriving boldly is not only possible but increasingly habitual. Reinforcement through recognition strengthens belief, providing motivation to continue expansion of capability. Curiosity, reflection, action, and accountability converge to form a self-sustaining cycle of growth. Each component supports the others, creating an environment where limiting beliefs are continuously challenged and empowerment is consistently reinforced. Over time, boldness becomes the natural response rather than the exception, and thriving emerges as a habitual pattern instead of an aspiration. Physical readiness complements mental resilience. Energy, posture, and physical engagement influence confidence and perceived capability. Maintain health through movement, nutrition, and rest to ensure the body supports mental clarity and emotional regulation. A strong, prepared body reinforces the mind's capacity to act boldly, amplifying the effect of cognitive and behavior interventions. Begin immediately with one belief to release. Identify a single statement that limits choice or behavior. Consciously challenge its validity, adopt an empowering alternative, and take one deliberate action that contradicts the restriction. Reflect afterward on the experience and note evidence of capability. Repeat daily, gradually expanding focus to multiple beliefs, integrating reflection, action, and reinforcement. Releasing limiting beliefs is a continuous process, requiring persistent attention, practice, and courage. Each step builds momentum, each success reinforces potential, and each deliberate challenge weakens mental chains. Boldness is cultivated, not granted, and thrives in a disciplined cycle of awareness, action, and reflection. Over time, the accumulation of these efforts produces a mind unshackled by fear, a body ready to act decisively, and a life directed by possibility rather than restriction. Number 8. Design life with intentional actions. Life unfolds moment by moment, yet most people drift through it as though it were a series of random occurrences rather than a canvas to shape deliberately. Designing a meaningful life begins with the conscious understanding that every action carries weight, influencing the trajectory of personal growth, relationships, and achievement. Intentional action is not about rigid control or perfection. It is about alignment between values, goals, and daily behavior. Each deliberate choice functions as a building block, gradually constructing a life that reflects authentic purpose and consistent direction. Start by clarifying core values. Values are the compass that guides decisions, offering clarity amid complexity and temptation. Identify principles that resonate deeply: honesty, courage, creativity, compassion, discipline. Evaluate current habits, routines, and commitments against these guiding values. Actions that align reinforce integrity and clarity, while those that conflict introduce dissonance and stagnation. By defining values, it becomes possible to act with purpose rather than react impulsively, ensuring that daily activity builds toward the life envisioned rather than dissipating energy on trivial pursuits. Set intentional goals that translate values into actionable outcomes. Goals bridge the gap between aspiration and reality. Avoid vague ambitions. Specify concrete, measurable, and time-bound objectives. Instead of "I want to be healthy," define "I will exercise 30 minutes daily and eat balanced meals 5 times per week." Goals act as checkpoints, signaling progress and providing motivation. The clarity of defined objectives channels focus and energy, reducing indecision and enhancing accountability. Prioritize actions that produce maximum impact. Life's resources, time, energy, attention, are finite. Assess tasks not merely by urgency, but by alignment with values and long-term goals. The Pareto principle applies. A minority of actions generate the majority of meaningful results. Deliberate selection of high-impact actions ensures that effort accumulates into significant forward movement rather than diffusing across inconsequential activity. Intentional life design relies on discerning which efforts are catalytic and which are peripheral. Create daily routines that reinforce desired outcomes. Habits automate intentional action, reducing reliance on fluctuating willpower or motivation. Design rituals that support growth, structured work periods, reflective pauses, exercise, skill practice, or creative expression. Repetition of aligned behaviors ingrains competence and consistency, producing momentum. The compound effect of small daily intentional actions accumulates into profound transformation over months and years. Reflection amplifies the power of action. Allocate regular intervals to review decisions, outcomes, and behaviors. Ask, did my actions today align with my values? Which choices advanced my goals, and which distracted me? Reflection turns ordinary experience into insight, revealing patterns and highlighting opportunities for refinement. By integrating awareness and analysis into daily life, each moment contributes to an evolving strategy of intentional living rather than remaining reactive to circumstances. Decision-making underpins life design. Recognize that indecision or passive compliance allows external forces to dictate outcomes. Approach choices deliberately, weighing short-term convenience against long-term benefit. Establish guiding criteria rooted in values and goals to streamline decisions. The ability to make consistent, conscious choices reinforces autonomy and cultivates a sense of mastery, allowing life to unfold according to deliberate intention rather than default patterns or external pressures. Environment functions as an extension of intentionality. Curate surroundings that support objectives, whether through physical space, social circles, or digital consumption. Remove elements that encourage distraction, negativity, or stagnation. Introduce stimuli that reinforce learning, motivation, and alignment with personal goals. A structured environment reduces friction, promotes consistency, and subconsciously reinforces the behaviors necessary to sustain progress. Life design is amplified when surroundings act as silent partners in achievement. Time management is essential. Recognize that hours are non-renewable currency. Allocate blocks to high-priority actions, balancing productivity with rest and reflection. Plan for focused, uninterrupted periods where critical tasks receive attention, minimizing multitasking that diminishes quality and drains energy. Intentional life design treats time as a strategic resource, deploying it in ways that compound toward meaningful outcomes rather than dissipating it on reactive or trivial activity. Anticipate challenges strategically. Obstacles are inevitable, but proactive planning minimizes disruption. Identify potential risks, knowledge gaps, or environmental constraints. Develop contingency plans and adaptive strategies. Anticipation does not eliminate uncertainty, but equips the mind to respond with composure, turning challenges into opportunities rather than crises. Preparation reinforces confidence and ensures that intentional actions are resilient to unexpected circumstances. Integration of reflection, planning, and execution creates a feedback loop that strengthens intentional living. Observe the results of actions, adjust strategies based on insight, and recommit to aligned behaviors. This iterative cycle ensures continuous improvement, transforming abstract goals into measurable progress. Over time, intentionality becomes second nature, and alignment between values, actions, and outcomes solidifies. Embrace deliberate experimentation. Life design is not static. It requires testing new routines, approaches, and behaviors. Monitor results and adjust accordingly. Experimentation reduces rigidity, fosters adaptability, and uncovers more effective methods for aligning action with purpose. Viewing life as an evolving laboratory encourages innovation, learning, and growth, transforming challenges into opportunities to refine strategy and reinforce intentionality. Accountability enhances focus. Share plans, goals, and progress with trusted mentors, peers, or structured communities. External feedback validates effort, highlights blind spots, and encourages consistency. Accountability creates a mirror, reflecting whether daily actions are aligned with long-term vision. When combined with self-assessment, accountability accelerates the transformation of intention into meaningful results, reinforcing both discipline and motivation. Self-compassion supports sustained engagement. Designing a life intentionally does not require perfection. Missteps and deviations are inevitable. Treat errors as opportunities for insight rather than sources of self-criticism. Reflection coupled with adaptive correction transforms setbacks into learning experiences. Compassion maintains motivation, reduces discouragement, and preserves momentum, ensuring that intentional living remains sustainable over the long term. Visualization strengthens action. Mentally rehearse scenarios aligned with goals, imagining challenges, responses, and successful outcomes in vivid detail. Visualization primes the mind, reduces anxiety, and enhances performance when translating intention into execution. It reinforces the neural patterns associated with desired behavior, making intentional actions more automatic and effective. Energy management is critical. Physical, emotional, and mental resources influence capacity for sustained intentional action. Integrate restorative practices, sleep, movement, nutrition, meditation to maintain clarity, focus, and resilience. Optimal energy enhances decision-making, execution, and consistency, allowing intentions to manifest effectively. Intentional living is supported by the deliberate management of the body as a foundation for mental and emotional performance. Begin immediately by selecting one area of life for focused attention. Define a concrete, achievable goal aligned with values, break it into actionable steps, and commit to consistent execution. Monitor outcomes daily, adjust strategies as insight emerges, and maintain alignment between effort and purpose. Small, consistent actions accumulate, creating momentum and reinforcing the habit of deliberate living. Intentional action transforms passive existence into active creation by defining values, establishing measurable goals, curating environment, reflecting regularly, and executing deliberately. Life becomes a canvas shaped by conscious choice rather than external circumstance. Each deliberate decision, aligned with purpose, reinforces autonomy, competence, and fulfillment. Over time, daily intentional actions compound, producing a life that is coherent, resilient, and deeply meaningful. Number 9. Rise stronger from past failures. Failure leaves marks, but those marks do not define the future. They are the raw material for strength, insight, and transformation. Every setback carries lessons, perspective, and opportunities that are invisible in the immediacy of disappointment. Rising stronger from past failures begins with a conscious decision to examine them objectively, to extract wisdom, and to reconstruct a mindset that sees challenges as fuel rather than hindrance. Strength is cultivated not in moments of ease, but in the deliberate response to adversity, and each failure is a crucible in which resilience is forged. The first step is honest assessment. Reflect on past failures without distortion or embellishment. Identify the precise actions, choices, or circumstances that contributed to the outcome. Observe the role of preparation, strategy, emotional state, and external factors. This objective examination separates personal responsibility from situational influences and creates a clear map for improvement. By understanding the components of failure, it is possible to address weaknesses and replicate strengths. Clarity removes confusion and allows deliberate reconstruction of approach. Emotional processing is critical. Failure often brings disappointment, shame, or frustration. Suppression amplifies negative energy, while indulgence in self-pity slows recovery. Acknowledge emotions fully, naming them and observing their impact on thought and behavior. Once recognized, channel feelings into constructive reflection rather than reactive behavior. Emotional clarity allows the mind to engage analytically and strategically, transforming raw reaction into purposeful growth. Reframe failure as data, not identity. A single misstep does not equate to inherent inadequacy. Each failure is evidence of attempt, learning, and boundary pushing. By separating personal value from performance outcome, the individual can engage setbacks without defensive rigidity. This reframing shifts perception from judgment to analysis, converting discouragement into insight. Strength emerges when identity is anchored in effort and learning, rather than the outcome of isolated events. Extract lessons systematically. For each past failure, list the specific insights it offers. Identify patterns, recurring behaviors, decision-making flaws, or knowledge gaps. Consider external variables that contributed and internal adjustments that could mitigate similar outcomes in the future. This extraction process converts vague regret into actionable intelligence, providing a toolkit for handling future challenges more effectively. Incremental rebuilding of confidence follows insight. Small, deliberate actions that address previously revealed weaknesses reinforce competence. If failure stemmed from poor preparation, implement structured planning in subsequent endeavors. If hesitation contributed to underperformance, practice decisive action in controlled scenarios. Each intentional step creates tangible evidence of capability, proving to the mind that past errors do not dictate future performance. Confidence grows in measured layers, solidified by repeatable successes. Perspective enhances resilience. Time and distance from failure allow evaluation of outcomes in broader context. Consider how the experience contributes to long-term growth, skill acquisition, and wisdom. Often, what felt catastrophic initially becomes instructive or even advantageous over time. Maintaining a long-range view prevents temporary setbacks from defining self-perception or limiting ambition. It fosters patience and reinforces the understanding that strength is built through cumulative experience, not instantaneous triumph. Adaptability is reinforced through reflection. Past failures highlight areas where rigidity or inflexibility contributed to defeat. Cultivate the capacity to adjust strategies, responses, and expectations according to circumstance. Adaptability is both preventative and restorative. It mitigates future setbacks and transforms the memory of past mistakes into a blueprint for strategic agility. The ability to pivot deliberately ensures that failure becomes a stepping stone rather than a stumbling block. Visualization strengthens recovery and readiness. Mentally rehearse future challenges where previous failures occurred. Imagine applying new strategies, responding calmly under pressure, and achieving desired outcomes. Include sensory detail, emotional regulation, and precise execution. Visualization primes the mind, reducing anxiety and reinforcing the capacity to act decisively. By mentally simulating success, the brain is conditioned to approach similar situations with confidence and composure. Accountability accelerates learning. Share reflections and strategies with trusted mentors, peers, or advisors. External perspectives provide feedback that validates insights, uncovers blind spots, and suggests refinements. Accountability ensures that lessons are not merely contemplated, but actively integrated into behavior. Collaborative reflection transforms isolated experience into robust, actionable knowledge, making recovery from failure more deliberate and informed. Incremental experimentation reduces fear. Approach situations that previously ended in failure as controlled trials. Test new behaviors, tactics, and strategies without the expectation of perfection. Observe outcomes objectively, adjust, and repeat. Framing attempts as experiments reduces emotional pressure, encourages curiosity, and strengthens the ability to learn from each encounter. Each successful iteration confirms that past failure is not a permanent limitation, but a temporary stage in ongoing growth. Physical and mental preparedness enhances the capacity to rise stronger. Adequate sleep, nutrition, and physical activity bolster resilience, focus, and clarity. Mental conditioning through reflection, meditation, or cognitive exercises sharpens judgment and emotional regulation. Strengthening both body and mind ensures that recovery is supported holistically, equipping the individual to respond effectively to challenges without being derailed by prior setbacks. Action reinforces insight. Knowledge alone is insufficient. Deliberate application is required. Implement changes informed by past failures immediately. Each successful execution rewires perception, providing concrete evidence that mistakes are not binding. The act of doing transforms abstract understanding into lived competence, bridging the gap between analysis and empowerment. Momentum builds as evidence accumulates, reinforcing the sense of mastery and reinforcing resilience. Celebrate incremental victories. Recognize each instance where past failures were confronted successfully, where learned strategies were applied, and where perseverance yielded measurable progress. Acknowledgement of achievement solidifies internal belief and motivates continued effort. Small successes compound, generating a trajectory of improvement that turns prior limitations into a narrative of capability and determination. Mindset shapes interpretation. Cultivate the belief that failure is informative rather than punitive, and that effort, strategy, and adaptation determine eventual success. Viewing challenges as opportunities for refinement reduces fear of experimentation and increases willingness to act decisively. A resilient mindset anchors the individual, allowing past setbacks to become catalysts for strength rather than anchors of doubt. Journaling consolidates transformation. Document past failures, extracted lessons, applied strategies, and outcomes of deliberate actions. Written records create a visible trail of progress, providing evidence of growth and reinforcing confidence. Over time, the log demonstrates evolution from error to mastery, encouraging perseverance and reinforcing the understanding that failure is a transient, instructive phase rather than a permanent state. Patience and persistence are essential. Recovery from failure is a process, not a single event. Consistent effort, reflection, and application over time generate durable strength. Recognize that setbacks do not indicate final judgment, but rather serve as stages in a continuous journey of learning, refinement, and mastery. Long-term resilience emerges from sustained commitment to growth rather than immediate perfection. Begin immediately by identifying a significant past failure, analyze its contributing factors, extract lessons, and define actionable steps to address weaknesses or gaps. Implement one deliberate action that demonstrates learned competence, reflect on the outcome, and adjust strategies accordingly. Repeat daily, progressively confronting areas where prior failures dominated. Through consistent engagement, the memory of failure transforms from burden to resource, reinforcing strength and capability. Rising stronger from past failures is an active, deliberate pursuit. Each step, reflection, emotional regulation, insight extraction, experimentation, and consistent action constructs resilience. Failure is reframed from finality into opportunity, weakness into instruction, and setback into a catalyst for skill, wisdom, and confidence. Over time, the accumulation of these deliberate efforts produces an individual capable of navigating adversity with composure, insight, and renewed determination, demonstrating that past failures are the foundation of future strength. Number 10. Unlock resilience through mindful reinvention. Resilience is not merely endurance. It is the capacity to recover, adapt, and thrive amid change and adversity. Unlocking resilience through mindful reinvention requires more than passive acceptance of circumstances. It demands deliberate reflection, conscious decision-making, and consistent action aimed at reshaping one's internal and external reality. Reinvention is not a superficial adjustment, but a profound recalibration of habits, mindset, and priorities to align with evolving goals and environments. Mindful reinvention transforms challenges into opportunities, setbacks into insights, and stagnation into forward motion, cultivating strength that endures beyond circumstance. The foundation of mindful reinvention is self-awareness. To navigate transformation effectively, observe your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors without judgment. Identify patterns that have led to frustration, failure, or stagnation. Recognize habits, beliefs, or routines that no longer serve your growth. Awareness illuminates the areas where intervention is necessary and provides clarity on what aspects of life can be leveraged or refined. By understanding the starting point, reinvention is grounded in reality rather than aspiration alone, ensuring that change is purposeful and sustainable. Acceptance of the present moment is essential. Resilience cannot grow in denial of circumstances or in resistance to reality. Mindful acknowledgement of current challenges, limitations, and opportunities allows for accurate assessment and strategic planning. Acceptance does not imply resignation. It is the recognition of what is true at this moment, creating a stable platform from which intentional action can emerge. From this clarity, reinvention is informed, deliberate, and grounded rather than reactive. Reflection facilitates insight. Examine past decisions and experiences to understand their outcomes. Identify patterns of thought, emotional responses, and actions that have either propelled growth or created setbacks. Reflection turns experience into knowledge, allowing failures to become instructional rather than punitive. By engaging deeply with personal history, one extracts lessons that illuminate the path forward, providing the tools necessary for effective reinvention. Set clear intentions for reinvention. Define what aspects of life require transformation and articulate desired outcomes in concrete terms. Intentions serve as navigational markers, guiding action and providing motivation. Avoid vague ambitions. Specificity enables measurement and accountability. For instance, instead of aiming to be stronger, identify precise behaviors or skills to cultivate, such as developing consistent morning routines, improving communication skills, or mastering a particular area of expertise. Intentionality transforms abstract aspiration into actionable direction. Incremental action reinforces resilience. Radical overhaul is often overwhelming and unsustainable. Break reinvention into small, manageable steps, each aligned with broader goals. Small, deliberate actions compound over time, producing visible progress and reinforcing belief in the capacity to change. Daily commitment to incremental improvement transforms the abstract goal of reinvention into concrete, achievable practice, allowing momentum to build gradually yet powerfully. Mindset plays a critical role. Adopt a growth-oriented perspective that views challenges as opportunities for development rather than insurmountable obstacles. Embrace the belief that abilities, behaviors, and circumstances can be shaped through deliberate effort. This mindset frames setbacks as temporary and instructional, creating psychological flexibility that strengthens resilience. Each challenge encountered becomes a laboratory for practice and improvement, rather than a judgment of inadequacy. Self-compassion supports sustainable reinvention. Transformation inevitably involves mistakes, missteps, and discomfort. Respond to these with understanding and encouragement, rather than harsh criticism. Compassion maintains motivation, reduces the risk of discouragement, and ensures that the journey toward resilience remains productive. Recognizing that imperfection is part of growth allows persistence to continue despite temporary setbacks or failures. Adaptability is integral. Life circumstances, goals, and internal capacities evolve continuously. Effective reinvention involves adjusting strategies, priorities, and behaviors to align with shifting conditions. Observe outcomes, reassess approaches, and remain flexible in application. Adaptable action ensures that transformation is not rigid or superficial, but responsive, capable of thriving under variable pressures and evolving challenges. Integration of reflective insight and deliberate practice deepens impact. Apply lessons from past experiences, coupled with intentional behavior modification across multiple areas of life. Mindful reinvention requires consistency, aligning thought, emotion, and action toward the desired transformation. Repetition and reinforcement create durable change, embedding resilience within both mindset and behavior. The convergence of insight and action generates internal strength that persists beyond individual circumstances. Visualization accelerates progress. Imagine scenarios where new behaviors, decisions, and responses are enacted successfully. Mentally rehearse navigating challenges with calm decisiveness and adaptability. Include sensory detail and emotional awareness to create vivid internal simulations. Visualization primes the brain for action, reducing anxiety and increasing precision when applying new approaches in real-life contexts. This preparatory mental work strengthens both confidence and competence, reinforcing resilience. Environment reinforces transformation. Surround yourself with people, spaces, and resources that support growth. Engage with individuals who model resilience, adaptability, and constructive behavior. Remove or reduce exposure to influences that reinforce stagnation, fear, or self-doubt. The environment serves as a silent partner in invention, subtly shaping thought, habit, and action through consistent cues and reinforcement. Accountability accelerates reinforcement. Share reinvention goals with trusted peers, mentors, or communities. Reporting progress, reflecting on outcomes, and receiving feedback ensures deliberate alignment between intention and behavior. Accountability enhances commitment, provides external perspective, and amplifies learning, ensuring that efforts to build resilience are both structured and verifiable. Emotional regulation underpins effective transformation. Reinvention involves confronting uncertainty, challenge, and internal resistance. Cultivating practices that stabilize emotion, such as mindfulness, meditation, controlled breathing, or journaling, ensures clarity in decision-making and sustained engagement. Emotional stability enhances the capacity to respond constructively, converting stress or discomfort into actionable insight rather than reactive avoidance. Celebrate progress, however incremental. Recognize moments when new strategies are applied successfully, when patience or composure prevails, or when challenges are navigated effectively. Celebration reinforces positive feedback loops, embedding confidence and motivation. Each acknowledgement of achievement strengthens resilience by demonstrating tangible evidence that deliberate reinvention is effective and ongoing. Curiosity fuels innovation. Approach reinvention with an investigative mindset, exploring alternative methods, habits, or perspectives. Question assumptions about limitations, potential, and strategy. Curiosity fosters creativity, encouraging exploration beyond habitual responses. Each experiment, whether successful or instructive, contributes to adaptive capability and reinforces the understanding that resilience is cultivated through active engagement with possibility. Energy management ensures sustainable effort. Mindful reinvention requires mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical readiness. Regular rest, movement, and nourishment optimize cognitive and emotional functioning. Maintaining energy levels supports consistent application of new strategies, reinforcing habits, and sustaining momentum in the long process of personal transformation. Begin immediately with focused, deliberate action. Identify one area for reinvention, define a measurable objective, and execute a small, intentional step. Reflect on outcomes, refine strategies, and continue forward. Repetition compounds growth. Each iteration strengthens resilience and solidifies the integration of insight and behavior. The journey of reinvention begins in the present moment, with conscious action translating intention into reality. Mindful reinvention merges insight, action, and reflection into a continuous cycle of growth. Resilience is cultivated not by avoidance of challenge, but by intentional engagement, adaptive response, and disciplined application. Each deliberate adjustment reinforces capability, autonomy, and emotional stability. Over time, this cycle produces an individual capable of navigating change with composure, turning adversity into opportunity, and thriving amid uncertainty with purpose and clarity.